Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel and to finally another book talk video. This time I am doing a review on a series and I am so excited because I just finished reading these books and loved them so much and I just had to share it with you. So keep in mind this video of course will be spoiler free, so if you haven't read these books, no worries, I am not going to give any spoilers whatsoever. As much as I would love to talk about them, I'm going to leave it spoiler free so that this video could really be for everyone. But we're going to dive in. I'm hoping I won't ramble on forever. Again, I think if I were to give spoilers, this video would be an hour long, but we're going to try and avoid that today. So today I am reviewing the Knockemout series by Lucy Score, and these are books that have been on my TBR and I got around to them kind of by accident actually. There are so many books on my list that I was like, you know, I'm always kind of like, well, what am I going to read next? But actually I came across Things We Never Got Over at a charity shop here in the UK, and I knew that this was on my list. I didn't know anything about this book though. I just kind of like added it to my list because I saw on TikTok that so many people were talking about it, and I was like, well, I'll just add it to my list and I'll read about it later. I'll figure out like what it's all about. So I saw this at a charity shop for only $1.50 and I was like, this is my sign. It is time to start this series, and I'm so glad that I did. And for $1.50, I was like, come on, I had to. The unfortunate thing was I had to spend full price on the other two because obviously what are the odds I'd ever find these at a charity shop when I found the first one? So whatever, to me it was worth it. So yeah, I obviously started with this one, which is Things We Never Got Over. It is the first book in the series. And then second is Things We Hide from the Light. And then lastly, we have Things We Left Behind. Things We Left Behind. I was like, wait, did I get that right? I did. So it's a trilogy, and I loved these books, you guys. And I do want to say, I know a lot of people have mixed opinions and reviews about them, and that's fine. Like, I feel like I see a lot of people on book talk kind of bashing people for what they like and don't like, and everyone has different opinions. So like, if you end up picking up this one and you hate it, I'm sorry. Like, I don't know, everyone has different opinions, and so I'm not here to bash anyone, what they like reading, what they don't like reading, and so I would hope that you won't bash me as well for enjoying this series. I really, really loved them. So yeah, I'm gonna dive in. Well, I already gave the correct reading order. So yes, it's Things We Never Got Over, Things We Hide from the Light, and Things We Left Behind. And I wanna also say that I would say the target audience for these books are definitely more geared toward adults. I'm sure there are gonna be some teens reading them as well, but I would definitely say probably more adult for this series. So a few things before I dive into each like individual book. A few things that I love about Lucy's writing style. This isn't in any particular order either. I just kind of wrote these things down because I loved these things about her writing. So her side characters are phenomenal. Obviously her main characters are as well, but her side characters are written out so well, which I think is a really great thing because I think side characters are almost like just as important as the main characters, and they're fleshed out really well. And I think that like seeing that these are small town romances, I think the side characters have to be important. They have to make a mark, and they definitely do. They're hilarious, they're lovable, they're fun and funny, and yeah, they were really, really great. So I definitely think the side characters in her books are, I don't know, just written so well. I also feel like her main characters, I might have even written this down, I'm looking down at my laptop by the way. But her main characters I really like as well because they're not necessarily like the kind of romance books where you're like, wow, this is such a perfect love interest. They have no flaws. Because I know there are romance books out there like that, especially with men. Like the male love interest, it's like he is this perfect guy who can do no wrong, and I love those books. But in these books, they're more realistic, I think. All her main characters are definitely, they're all going through some things. They're human beings, you know, they have some baggage, they've dealt with some things. And so I think because of that, they're more realistic. So I really like that. They are not perfect, and you're probably gonna get mad at some of these characters throughout the series a little bit. Again, I kind of think that's realistic and kind of normal. So I really like that. A couple other things, I love Lucy's sense of humor. I think that, you know, her books had me laughing out loud at quite a few points. I didn't cry while reading them except for one book, I think. Maybe tearing up in another one, but I'll tell you that later. But yeah, so there were some more difficult and intense parts throughout her books, but for the most part, they were really lighthearted and fun and nothing serious. You know, they're fun, they're funny. And again, yes, there were intense moments, but she actually does a really good job of making them feel, I don't know, she lightens up the intensity a little bit by adding humor to those scenes. I guess that's like a movie. I never know what to say. Parts? Scenes? I don't know. But she definitely finds a good way to kind of inject humor into those parts of the book so that you're not like, wow, this is so intense. It's a romance book after all. I mean, how intense can they really be? So yeah, she does a great job of adding humor into her books. So I was definitely laughing out loud in a lot of these parts of the books. So that's always really great. All right, I think it is time that we start talking about each individual book. So of course we have to start with the first one. So Things We Never Got Over. So the first book in the series. So I actually think this one was my favorite, but I'll rank them at the end. But little spoiler, it's my favorite, I think. So I want to start by talking about like the tropes, trigger warnings, spice rating, kind of all of that. These books do have some spice in them, so if you're not into that, maybe don't pick it up or give it a try, and if it's too much or you don't enjoy that kind of thing, like, I'm letting you know now, these books are spicy. There are a few spicy parts or scenes in each book, so keep that in mind. I kind of feel like I'd rate it, like if we're talking like low, medium, high, I'd say medium, high, something like that. Honestly, again, everyone's like opinion of that or kind of rank, like a scale of like how spicy is too spicy. Everyone's different, so like for me, maybe medium, high, I don't know. So like I said, there are a few spicy parts in each book. It's not too much to the point where it's like constant, but it is something to be aware of, especially in the later chapters in these books. So keep that in mind. Again, if it's not your cup of tea, you may not want to read these, but it's just totally dependent on you. Some of the tropes in this book, I would say slow burn. These are all slow burn books, and I love a slow burn romance, I'm not gonna lie. Fake dating, although it's not like super strong in this one, but it is there, maybe in a scene or two. Grumpy sunshine romance, so it's kind of like opposites attract, and I'll get into that in a minute. And it's a small town romance, and it's somewhat enemies to lovers-ish. I guess that's fair to say that. So that's that, and then some trigger warnings. I would say child neglect, abuse in a past relationship, violence, but it's not, again, like I said, it's violence, but in a romance book kind of way. It's nothing crazy intense. At least I didn't feel like I was on the edge of my seat reading this. It was still enjoyable and relaxing, I guess you could say, but there is some violence in these books, so just keep that in mind. These books also have dual point of view, which is like my favorite thing. I don't know if I can read a romance book now without dual point of view, because Abby Jimenez does this. I think she might actually be the only author that I've read so far that does this besides Lucy Score, and I wish all romance authors did this. I love being able to see the guy's point of view and the girl's point of view. I love it so much. So yeah, that's another thing. All of these books have that, and again, I eat that up. I adore it. I love it. I live for it. All right, so the main characters in this book, we have Naomi Witt and Knox Morgan. So these books take place in a small town. It's a made-up town called Knockemout, and it's supposed to be in Northern Virginia. So yeah, super small town where everyone knows everyone, and I kind of love that. I feel like I've fallen in love with the whole small town romance type thing. So Naomi is a runaway bride. She ends up in Knockemout because of her sister. So she has a twin sister named Tina, and they are also complete opposites. So her and Knox are opposite. Her and Tina are very opposite. Naomi's always been like the good girl. She's the people pleaser. Her parents, you know, she's always trying to make sure everyone else is good, everyone's happy. In the meanwhile, like, she's suffering, you know what I mean? She's that kind of person, and I can relate. She's definitely that kind of girl, and she's always done everything by the book, everything right. And then her sister Tina is definitely like the troublemaker. She's gotten in trouble with the law. She's just done some terrible things. She's like not a good person. So her sister Tina kind of I don't know the word, but kind of gets her to come to Knockemout to help her. She made it seem like she needed help, and this isn't a spoiler. It is like in the first like chapter basically, but she ends up getting to Knockemout, and her sister Tina steals her car, steals her money, and leaves her like high and dry, and basically Naomi is left with like nothing. She's like, she ran out on her wedding. She's in this town where she doesn't know anyone. She was there, she was gonna help her sister, and her sister basically slapped her in the face and left. So that happened, and then she ends up in a cafe where she meets Knox, and it is not a meet cute, to put it simply. He thinks that she's Tina, and he starts yelling at her. You know, she's caused all this trouble in this town, and eventually he realizes that this is not Tina, it is actually her twin sister Naomi. So, come to find out, Naomi has a niece that she did not know about named Waylay. And yeah, so she had no idea she has this 11-year-old niece that she now is responsible for. She now has to take care of a child. And so her life basically has been flipped upside down. And Knox just happens to kind of be there witnessing it all. And, you know, he's very grumpy. She's the sunshine in this relationship. He's definitely the grumpy guy who doesn't want to like her, doesn't want to have to help her, but he does. He's that kind of guy with a really hard like exterior, really soft interior, but you have to work really hard to get to that soft interior. And Naomi finds her way into his heart. Now obviously these are romance books, so again, it's not a spoiler that these have happy endings. I don't love saying that, but like, I think it's part of the genre. I think if you're a romance lover, we all know this, it's part of the genre. I believe Abby Jimenez might have even said about her books that, and about romance, the genre of romance in general, is that happily ever after is basically a requirement for the genre, whereas if it doesn't have a happily ever after, it's more likely a tragedy or a love story. So these are romance books, so I don't think that's a spoiler. I think it's kind of to be expected. So I love that. That makes me happy. And I think romance books are really comforting in that way, because you know that even though the author might put you on a roller coaster of emotions and she might make the characters go through lots of twists and turns, you know that, you know, you'll be good in the end. The characters will be good in the end. So that is kind of my little brief description of this book, and I absolutely loved it. I really, really did. Like I said, these characters are not perfect in any way, especially Knox. I think, especially Knox, of all the guys in these books, I think he's gonna make you the most mad. Reading, you know, his, from his point of view and seeing what he does throughout the story, like, it's a guy who, he's been through some things, he's dealing with some trauma and some baggage from his life. Another thing I want to say, these characters are on, I was going to say on the older side. They're in their like late 30s, early 40s, which is interesting for me. I haven't read about characters in that kind of age range. So just something, again, I don't know, you may want to keep in mind, just something to know about these books. And I think that's probably why people get frustrated with these books, maybe, is because they're like, Knox is supposed to be like 43 and Naomi is 36, I think. So people are like, how is a 43-year-old man acting like this? And I get it, but I also feel like it's realistic in a lot of ways, because trauma, baggage, issues like that, if you don't work on them, that can follow you for the rest of your life. You could be 80 and still acting like that. So I know, you know, you might get mad at it. I found it really entertaining. Moving on now to Things We Hide from the Light. So this one I was kind of nervous about going into, because I had heard a couple people say that they found this one really boring and they didn't like it. And again, everyone has their own opinion. So like, someone may have found this the most boring book in the world. Someone else may have found it to be the most amazing book in the world. I really enjoyed it. I didn't find it boring. To be honest, these are pretty big romance books. These are around 500 pages or more. Actually, this one has more. So they are big for romance books. And so a lot of people felt like these books are unnecessarily long. I didn't feel that way. I read all of these books in like 3 to 4 days. So for me, I flew through them and loved them. I feel like a lot of people said with this one that there's no plot. I personally feel like the plot in this one's quite similar to the first book, Things We Never Got Over, but it's different enough. The main characters are different enough, and I think different things happen in the story that for me, again, it was different enough where it didn't feel like I was just rereading the first book. So I was nervous about that, which is why I normally don't like to read anything about a book before I go into it, because I don't care to hear about other people's opinions. I want to form my own opinion and love it or hate it on my own. I really enjoyed it. So with this book, I would rank the spice, again, the same. I think for all of them, medium high-ish. The tropes in this one, slow burn, they're all slow burns. Very slow burn though. I think again that's maybe why people felt like it was boring, was because it was quite a slow burn. I enjoy that. I love the tension. I love like the very just slow build up to a relationship. I love it. This one's also opposites attract, small town romance, brother's best friend or brother's friend type of situation, and forced proximity. So some trigger warnings with this one: anxiety, depression, PTSD, and again, some violence in there as well. I might miss a couple, but I think those are some of the bigger ones. Yeah, dual point of view, love it. So with this book, yeah, I really enjoyed it. Okay, so with this book, we have Nash, which is Knox's brother, and Lena. So both of these characters we met in Things We Never Got Over. We met Lena toward the end, but Nash was there because he's Knox's brother. So we got to know him a little bit in the first book. So in this one, something traumatic happens to Nash in the first book. I'm not going to say what that is. Nash is a cop. He's the chief of police in Knockemout, and Lena is actually Knox's ex-girlfriend from like college years. So this is a long time ago that they had a brief, like, I think they briefly dated. It was never anything serious. So those are the two main characters in this one, and Nash is kind of the opposite to Knox. He's like the good guy. He is still a Morgan, so he's gonna mess up a couple times in this book, and maybe say the wrong thing, do the wrong thing, but you gotta love him. He's like the good guy. He's the cop, and he's the kind of guy who, unlike Knox, he really wants a family. He wants a wife and kids, and like he's more traditional in that sense than Knox was. So I loved Nash, I really did. He surprised me, because in the beginning I loved Knox, and now I'm like, oh, Nash, I don't know. I loved him. And Lena is, again, opposite to him. She's definitely more edgy and cool, and she's very independent and confident. She does her own thing. She's not into commitment. She doesn't want anyone like tying her down. She likes doing her own thing and having her own space. So, it's kind of like, again, Things We Never Got Over, but reversed. So the girl is kind of not wanting to commit, whereas the guy is. So, things we hide from the light. Basically, Lena comes into the picture, like I said in the last book, and Nash and Lena meet in that book. And you could tell there's an attraction, but it doesn't go anywhere in that book because that's not their story, but this is. So we dive deeper into their love story. So Nash, like I said, he's going through something really traumatic from that first book, and in this book he's dealing with, like I said, PTSD, depression, anxiety. He's really struggling after that incident, and Lena ends up moving in next door to him. Lena is quite secretive about her work. She says that she works in insurance, but she's hiding some things. Nash is hiding his depression and anxiety from his family, so they're both hiding things, hence the name of the book. And they quickly open up to each other. They really confide in each other, and they share kind of their darker secrets, what they're dealing with each other. And some truth comes to light about Lena. Again, there are some ups and downs in their relationship. But yeah, this book kind of surprised me. Again, I wasn't expecting to love it as much as I did, but I really, really enjoyed it. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I can say without getting into spoilers. But because Lena is Knox's friend, again, there might be a bit of like, kind of like, you better not hurt her going on. And so it's a really good story. I loved this one. I really genuinely did. So I don't really agree with what other people have said about it negatively. I really enjoyed it, if like almost as much as the first one, I think. So that's just me. So yeah, like I said, plot is somewhat similar to the first one, but there is enough going on that's different for me to stick around with it. I didn't personally feel like it was so similar that I was reading the same book. So for me, there was enough going on in all of these pages. Things don't really start to pick up with like their relationship until like chapter like 35 or something, around there. So yeah, you're gonna have to be patient with this one. It's worth it though, I promise. I think especially once you get toward the second half of the book, it becomes really great. So power through it. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. So that is Things We Hide from the Light. I just want to quickly also mention a couple brief moments in this book that are not spoilers that I just loved. Waylay's soccer game, that whole part, hilarious. The whole argument, cracking up at that part, loved it. I think that was mainly the thing I wanted to say. Oh, and the epilogue, oh my goodness, you guys. This was the one that had me crying. I didn't cry with the first book, but the epilogue in this one, you're gonna need tissues. I'm telling you, it was so, so good. Oh my goodness. And lastly, we have Things We Left Behind. Now, so many people were saying that this was their favorite in the series, and I don't know. This one, to me, I actually still think I like the first book the most, but I did love the other two, I'm not gonna lie. Like, I loved them all. I couldn't, you know, it was still great. I really enjoyed it. So this book is quite different from the other two. I feel like the plot in this one's very, very different. By the way, another thing I love is that when you have an interconnected series, I love seeing characters from the first book or the second book come up in this one. Same with Things We Hide from the Light. It's all a big family and friend group, so of course you're going to see these characters reappear in the later books, which I love that so much. I adore that. So Things We Left Behind. So with this book, I'm going to scroll down here. Spice rating is the same, medium, medium high. The tropes in this book: slow burn, small town romance, definite enemies to lovers in this one. Yeah. Childhood friends to enemies, if that's a trope, that's kind of what this is as well. And then second chance romance, although these characters didn't really get a chance to have a romance in the first place, but it's sort of a second chance type of romance. Some trigger warnings. There's some domestic abuse going on in this one, not between the main characters, but it affects them. And some violence, that kind of thing. So, this one. So, this book centers around Lucian and Sloane. So, Lucian is Knox and Nash's friend from childhood. They've known each other like their whole lives. Sloane is the librarian in the town, and we have met these two characters again in both the previous books. We met them in the first one, and they're kind of part of that same group of friends, although Sloane and Lucian are like enemies, and we don't know why. In the first two books, we get these little crumbs, we get these little moments between them where things are really tense and we don't understand why. Especially in the first book, we really don't get much of their background. All we know is that they have some history between them. Something went down in the past and we don't know what it is. In the second book, I think a bit more is revealed about it, but again, we still don't really know what happened between them. And then we get to this book. This is their book. So finally, I think what was really exciting about going into this one is that you finally get to dive into their past and their history and figure out why they're enemies, why they are the way they are. And Lucian is very protective over Sloane, so I love that. So even though like they are always going at each other, very argumentative, he's always very protective over her, and I love that. So this book starts out with a funeral, and again, this is not a spoiler because it's not one of the main characters. The person who dies is related to Sloane, but we didn't meet that person, so it's not a huge deal, but that was her father. I guess I could say that. So Sloane's father has passed away, and this book starts out with a funeral. So Sloane is there with her family, with her friends Knox, Nash, Lena, Naomi, they're all there. And eventually Lucian shows up, and he goes up to her mom, he hugs her, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, Sloane's mom is very like thankful for Lucian. Again, there's clearly something going on that as readers we're not quite sure what that is yet, but her mom seems very thankful for Lucian being in their lives, and he seems to have done something really nice for the family, and Sloane is very confused. She's like, why is she thanking him? Like, why is she hugging him? What's going on? We eventually find out what that is, but basically, Sloane and Lucian have a past, like I said. So they have been in each other's lives since they were teenagers. Lucian and Sloane were neighbors, and are technically still neighbors. And yeah, I'm not going to say obviously what happened between them when they were teenagers, but something really dark and really serious happens. Those parts I'd say were the most intense parts in the series, the stuff that happened from their teenage years. So I'm going to skip that and move on to like the present day in this book. So yeah, the funeral happens, and throughout this book, it is mainly Lucian and Sloane fighting what we as readers have seen and known all along, which is that there's clearly love there. There's clearly a, you know, protectiveness, if is that a word, that Lucian feels towards Sloane. They've got history. There's definitely love there. There's a type of love there. And throughout this book, they're both kind of fighting that, but there's so much tension in this one. There's so much like build up, that once things kind of start to move forward with them, it's like, finally. So like I said, Sloane is the town librarian. She loves her job. She's really good at her job. She can be a bit feisty, but she's really fun. All these characters, I feel like, especially the girls, I love them. They're all strong in their own way. They're all very different to each other, which again helps these books feel like you're not rereading the same one over and over again. The female leads in these books are all amazing and different from each other, but they're also great friends, and I love that. So that's that. And then Lucian is very kind of mysterious. Again, in the first couple books, we really didn't know what he did for work. We just knew that he was very wealthy and he could basically make people disappear if he wanted to. So we really don't know much about him, but again, we learned so much more in this book. Once again, there's lots of trauma that these characters are dealing with, some grief and baggage like all of these characters kind of have, and so yeah, it's really them working through that in order to love each other and accept each other, and also to kind of forgive each other for what happened in the past, to be able to move forward and have a serious relationship. And it's a super slow burn, even though some things happen with them where they get quite close in certain parts of the book. Their relationship doesn't really happen till the very end, but it is worth like powering through this one. It is worth it. It is so good. Again, there wasn't a dull moment. There was a huge plot twist. I mean, I don't know if it's a plot twist, but a huge shock later on in this book that I was not expecting. I literally gasped. I was like, oh my gosh. So yeah, it's a really great book. I feel like I didn't describe this one as well, but there's a lot that I don't want to say. I think this one probably has the most spoilers, so I'm gonna probably stop talking before I share too much. So overall, there was so much that I loved about these books, and I honestly can't find anything I didn't like except for maybe one thing, and it wasn't enough to make me put down the books and stop reading, clearly, because I have been talking about how much I loved them and I read them all. I would say the one thing that, again, maybe stops someone from continuing on with this series is sometimes there were some words that were used, some phrases, some lines that were a little cringy. And again, it wasn't enough to make me go, oh, I can't read the rest of this. But it was just like certain words, certain lines and phrases. I was like, okay, I'm moving on from that. Just gonna pretend I didn't read that and move forward. But other than that, like, I mean, again, it depends. It's just totally up to you. You have to just try this one. And if it's not your cup of tea, like, you don't need to read the rest. I personally could not put them down. I was so excited to like get home and just read the rest. I was just so excited. So read them so quickly, loved them so much. And my ranking personally is the order that they came out in. And I was surprised. I thought that this one was definitely going to be a favorite because so many other people said it was their favorite. But again, actually, I loved it most in the order that they came out in. So that's just me. So yeah, things we never got over, things we hide from the light, and things we left behind. So I personally think that it was a really great romance series. It was just so fun. Again, lighthearted. Ended up being beautiful love stories that I just really personally enjoyed. So yeah, love me a small town romance, and it was just really great. So I definitely recommend them. I actually gave them all 4 stars. So if you have read these, let me know if you enjoyed them or if you plan to read them. You should be very excited. I really, really loved it. So before I just repeat myself over and over, I guess that should be the end of this video. So that is it. That is the Knockemout series by Lucy Score. Lucy does have other books. She's got many other books actually that I've never read, but I think this is her most popular series if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's her most popular, and I could see why. I really genuinely loved it. Also, something very exciting is that Things We Never Got Over, the first book in the series, is turning into a show. Oh my goodness, you guys. Now, I'm very nervous about this because seeing how It Ends With Us turned out, I really hope they don't mess it up. I think anyone who loves reading, I think, is terrified anytime we find out that there's going to be a show or a movie based on like our favorite books, because it's so easy for them to mess it up. I am praying they don't mess it up, but I'm wondering if maybe they'll see how the first like season goes, if it's going to be a thing, like a series. I don't know. All I know is that the first book is getting like a TV show type thing, but it's on Amazon. It's going to be that kind of thing, I guess. So probably a few episodes. I'm also excited though. That's the thing, is like you're nervous because you don't want them to mess it up, but at the same time you're kind of excited to see your favorite characters, this town that you love, this story come to life on screen. So I am looking forward to it. I don't know when that's gonna come out because I think it was announced that it was happening in 2023. So I'd imagine quite soon we'll find out some more news about that if things go well. But yeah, so really exciting things to look forward to. I have to see, maybe if I don't know, maybe I want to read more Lucy Score books. We'll have to see. But for now, I think I'm going to end it there. So thank you so much for watching. I love these book talk videos. It's been a while since I've done a whole review, but I actually have another series review coming out soon. I haven't finished the last book in that series. I'm going to finish it and then film, but I can't wait to share that one with you in the future. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one.